Hello everyone, Rurikhan here coming at you with another Diablo 3 video, and today I wanted to tell you guys about the builds that I've currently been working on for my three main characters, which are really the only characters I have at level 70, which are the Crusader, Barbarian, and the Monk, which I told you guys I wanted to make a Monk, and recently I got a friend of mine to boost me through Torment 6 to just get the character up to 70 and then just kind of work on it a little bit. So, let's talk about the Crusader for starters, because currently the Crusader is my main character. He has probably the highest level of gear of all my characters, and I can somewhat comfortably run the Crusader through Torment 3, even though we're only on Torment 1 so that I can focus on the commentary and all that. This character, I've been safely farming stuff on Torment 3 whenever I need materials or whatever. I just pick up this guy and just go straight into Torment 3. So let's talk about the build itself real fast. Not going to go into too much detail because it is a fairly simple build. It consists of kind of like the same build that I had previously. If you guys remember, it was a build that very much surrounded, based around the use of Punish and Roar, so actually taking a beating whilst dishing out damage to your enemies. So we obviously still have Punish Roar, since it is without a doubt one of my favorite Crusader skills. The main issue with using something like this, for those of you who are maybe planning on using this strategy, is as you go to higher levels of Torment, it becomes increasingly hard to maintain this type of playstyle, because I don't know what happens like from tier 4 onwards, but it seems like, and again, this might be due to the fact that I haven't really read up on the mechanics of the higher levels of difficulty of Diablo 3, but what seems to happen is the mobs kind of bypass the block, or they just hit so hard that blocking doesn't even matter, because I die super fast. And I mean super fast whenever I'm trying to block in Torment 4. But anyways, for Torment 3, it is still working reasonably well. Now, for my Wrath Spender, I've gone with Fist of Heavens. You guys might be wondering, so what made you switch from hammers? Because you really enjoyed hammers and all that stuff. Well, the fact of the matter is, unless you have gear that really boosts the hammer's damage becomes pathetic as you level up. So currently, Fist of Heaven's Divine Well seems to be doing okay for me. It is still not what I would consider to be like the best Wrath Spender on the Crusader. In terms of alternatives for this build, you can also use a Blessed Shield. It is a very, very good alternative, particularly if you stick, Shattering Throw on it, or if you're running a fire-based build, which you can, because as you guys know, Punish plus Roar is fire. So if you're running a fire-based build, like if you're getting items that give you a lot of fire damage, you might even consider using Blessed Shield with Combust. Does a ton of damage. But the fact of the matter is, I wanted to base this build more around holy damage, because I'm also using Heaven's Fury. So instead of actually focusing on the fire thing, I went for the holy build. And you guys will see how that works, but I'm just letting you guys know ahead of time that Blessed Shield is also a very, very viable alternative for this build. Maybe even better than Fist of Heavens. Just for my personal playstyle right now, Fist of Heavens seems to be giving me more bang for my buck, particularly in single target DPS, which is a problem for this particular build. It's very good for AoE stuff and getting hit by a ton of enemies, but it's not that good when you're fighting enemies one-on-one, and as a matter of fact, takes quite a bit of time. The bread and butter damage dealing skill of this build, which previously was Punish plus Roar, currently it is Condemned, and this is due to gear. And unfortunately, there is a part of this build that currently works really well because of two items that I have, which I will show you, that are my sword and my shield. These are two really, really valuable items. Those of you who are aware of the types of items that you can get in Diablo 3 probably figured out that I have the sword that boosts Condemned's damage. I will show you guys that in a couple of seconds. But Condemned with Vacuum. Why? Because I really like the Vacuum rune on Condemned, because basically you can get more targets. Like, some people will tell you, oh, you should use the one that reduces the cooldown so that you can do it more often, or you should use the one that is instant so you can maybe use it more often in conjunction with Akarat's Champion. Me personally, I think it doesn't get any better than the Vacuum rune, because you can kind of like run through a place sometimes and just like get a ton of targets on top of you, which is really good, because then after you vacuum the targets on top of you, you can bang. You can do provoke with the hit me rune, which is going to increase your block by 50%. Then just punish one of them, and you've got yourself a ridiculous amount of damage going out from punish roar alone, plus whatever damage you're going to be doing from vacuum. And then on top of that, you can put Heaven's Fury with Blessed Ground. So this is kind of like a ridiculous amount of damage going off, and at this time, none of these skills really uses Wrath. So then you can just spam Fist of Heavens down like a maniac, and you're going to have like a ton of monsters on top of you. You're going to be doing Condemned. You're going to have Provoke up, so they're going to be attacking you. You're going to have Heaven's Fury going off, and you're going to, on top of everything, just lay down the Fist of Heavens. And then when you run into bosses, which are going to take a little bit more damage for you to actually kill, like I said, you do have a couple of issues dealing with single targets, you're going to pop Akarat's Champion with Rally. And why Rally? Because it's going to reduce the cooldown on your Condemned. It is going to reduce the cooldown on all of your skills, obviously, so you can do Condemned and Heaven's Fury a lot more often, as well as Provoke. And you guys might be like, why would you want to spam Provoke, though? Well, because you're going to get more Wrath out of Provoke, which is going to allow you to spam even more Fists of Heavens. Now, in terms of passive, Heavenly Strength, so that you can use a two-handed weapon, is pretty much a must-have because Punish only does 45% weapon damage, so you want to get a weapon that does as much damage as possible to take more benefit from Punish. Then we have Renewal, which is essential for your survival. If you guys notice, I don't have that much healing even, so Renewal is basically my source of healing. I need to be getting hit in order to survive. Like I've said, it is pretty much the bread and butter of this. Then we go for Finery, because if you guys notice, I have a ton of socketed gear. Well, not really a ton, but I do have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 gems even. So 7 times 70, you guys do the math. It's going to give me a ton of strength. And then I am using Hold Your Ground. Now, if you are confident enough that you don't need this extra block, you can switch Hold Your Ground for the thing that I was using previously was Holy Cause, because a lot of the damage that I'm dishing out is holy. So there's that. Anyways, this is pretty much the outline of the build. Let me show you guys how it works. Oh yeah, I forgot. I also need to show you guys the gear. Currently, I'm running 2 pieces of the Ashiara set. I'm not sure if I ever showed you guys that on my previous Crusader build. I had the full Ashiara set. Right now, I'm only using 2 pieces because something that I've noticed with this build is that I want to be able to spam these abilities as much as I possibly can. So I started going after cooldown reduction. And one of the best sets that you can get that is kind of easy, somewhat easy to get, is the Captain Crimson set. So you got the Silk Gurgle, the Thrust, and the Boots. And what this does is when you get 2 pieces, you're going to get, I'm not even counting the regenerates 2,000 life per second because life regen is a stat that I really don't care about. But cooldown reduction by 10% for 2 pieces and another 10% for 3 pieces. So that is 20% cooldown reduction over these 3 items, which is definitely a good thing. Then on my gem, on the Helm of a Khan, I'm also running a cooldown reduction gem so that it increases the cooldown reduction even more. But like I told you guys, a lot of the things about this particular build depend on my weapon, the Blade of Prophecy. Now, I've been told recently that this blade apparently has been nerfed. I haven't really noticed that. A friend of mine told me that it was only triggering 2 condemned as opposed to all the enemies condemned. And I haven't noticed that, but we'll be seeing that as we play through this character today. But yeah, basically what this sword does is when you condemn an enemy, all of them trigger a condemned explosion as well. So basically it's like a big friggin' nuke that just explodes everything around you. So which is why you put vacuum on top of that, and you got like a bunch of monsters just piling up on top of you and then just exploding each other all over the damn place, which is really, really good, in my personal opinion. Then the shield that I've gotten was actually really lucky as well, because this is a shield that whenever I block, there's a chance to summon a charging wolf that deals 353% weapon damage to all enemies it passes through. So, considering that this is a shield that a build that revolves around blocking, obviously this is going to be a pretty damn useful item. Then the only other item of note, I think, is the Countess Julia's cameo. Even though this is not essential for the build, it's pretty damn good because pretty much I don't take arcane damage, which was one of the main sources of my deaths. Really, it was one of the main causes of my deaths was arcane damage. Getting a monster that does arcane damage in the middle of a tight space, and well, you guys probably already know what happens. As you can see, this is pretty much how the build works. You just charge right in, you pop, you're condemned, it's going to put a bunch of monsters on top of you, then it's going to just explode them into oblivion. As you can see, these guys here are not even going to be much of a challenge, like I said. The current plateau of this character is tier 3, and not necessarily tier 3, Torment 3, and not necessarily Torment 1, so... But it's like, this is essentially how the build works. You just kind of pull mobs in, you do your Heaven's Fury, you do your Condemned, and mobs explode and die. Wow, that was pretty fast. I did not expect it to be this fast. I usually, with this character, I usually do even the bounties in tier 3 just for, you know, additional chances of getting loot and stuff like that. But yeah, this is essentially the way I play. It is also very good for party play. The thing about this character is, like I've said previously, you cannot have multiple people running this build because you're going to be taunting off each other and you're just going to be hurting each other. Now, if you guys notice, I popped Akarat here just so that you guys could see how fast you can actually get the cooldowns up. And it is pretty damn fast. Once you pop Akarats, you're going to be dishing out a tremendous amount of punishment. And it is just going to be beast mode engaged pretty much. And as you can see, Fist of Heavens is doing upwards of 2 million damage per hit, which again is not that much. Some people might be like, 2 million damage per hit, that's pretty good. It's not really, it's not that much, but it's a lot better than the hammers, because the hammers I'd be doing 1 million damage per hit, and I wouldn't necessarily be aiming them precisely to my target, whereas with the Fist of Heavens, you actually aim at your target. Not only that, but you'll notice that they also do little lightnings of their own, kind of like the buff of, what do you call it? The Nephilim Glory buff, if you guys notice that. Like, look, they're doing a little bit of a lightning blast to the enemies they're going through. And sure, it's not that much damage, like 600, 700k, but if you spam a bunch of this, I mean, just look at it. Boom, 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 and you got these lightnings going all over the place, destroying everything around you. So it is pretty decent, and this is the build that I'm currently running on my Crusader. I think you guys pretty much get a good idea of what this build is about. Now, let's go on and get my Barbarian out there. Also, you guys will notice that I do care a lot about the way that these characters look, because, I mean, if you're going to be farming materials for hours and, you know, just going after specific armor sets or specific stuff, you're gonna want your character to look somewhat decent. At least that's my personal opinion. For those of you that want to know what look this is, I mean, the shoulders are the Apolliers, and then the rest of it is the Ascended armor. The sword and shield are their original designs, pretty much. And then I painted everything with Purity dye, except the helmet, because if you paint the helmet with Purity dye, the middle part is going to become white, whereas if you just leave it with no dye, it becomes golden in the middle, which matches the armor a little bit more. Again, this is just for those of you who care about Reaper of Fashion. Now, onto my Barbarian, which is actually a build that I had to struggle with for a little bit, because Blizzard nerfed the Shard of Hate very, very heavily, and again, I haven't tested this to great lengths, but it seems like the nerf was really only to affect Whirlwind, which I was like, well, that's kind of weird, but whatever. So let's just go outside and I will start telling you guys about the build in a couple of seconds. Let's first talk about the whole nerf situation of the Shard of Hate. So for starters, I'm going to switch to Whirlwind with lightning damage, which I showed you guys about this Whirlwind build. And I even told you guys I don't care about this Whirlwind build all that much because it was a little bit too simplistic. All you really had to realistically do was right click and you just get tons and tons and tons of lightnings going off and you'd kill everything. Now, I wasn't particularly passionate about that build because, like I said, it was a pretty easy way to do things. But I do feel that the nerf that this sword got, which for those of you who don't know what the Shard of Hate is, basically whenever you do elemental skills such as Cold Poison or Lightning, you're going to get different effects off of the sword. And previously, when you did Lightning, Whirlwind, you would get a lot of Lightning procs. Now look at this. I'm barely getting any Lightning procs at all. Like, this is useless. I completely stopped my Lightning build because this was completely and utterly useless. Now, notice the difference when I actually switched to Frenzy with Smite. it procs a lot more often, doesn't it? It doesn't proc as much as it used to, but it procs a lot more often than it does with Whirlwind. And I was just thinking, like, what is the logic behind specifically going after nerfing one skill? Now, I know there were a couple of barbarians out there who were running Torment 6 with this build, and more power to them. I'm just saying, like, I think it's kind of unfair from a standpoint of like, oh, I want to build a Whirlwind Barb. Well, forget about Shard of Hate because it's going to suck. I mean, it procs way too little for any usefulness at all. So once I noticed this nerf, I was like, well, I guess we have to go back to the drawing board. So the build that I came up with was around the Frostburn. Damn it. This is actually an item, for those of you who don't know, this item was in Diablo 2, by the way, which is, it was a really cool sorceress item because it also did something with cold skills. I can't remember exactly what it did. But anyways, what this item does is your chill effects have up to 45% chance to freeze instead of slow. And why would I want to do a build around this? Because I had this axe, right? And this axe gives you a 21% chance to be surrounded by a chilling aura when attacking, which probably would give you a lot of chances to proc off of Frostburn, and then obviously you would get a lot of times where enemies would be frozen. So I thought, well, you know what? Let's go ahead and just go all out and do a build around cold damage. Now, the thing about Barbarians is they don't really have a cold damage generator. So since I still have the Shard of Hate, I went with Frenzy and Smite, because it still procs reasonably with Frenzy, in my opinion, which still does a tremendous amount of damage for those little charged bolts. So I left it like that. However, if you do not have Shard of Hate, the generator that I would advise you is either Frenzy with Maniac, which is going to increase your damage by 2.5%, or if you're too bothered in having to kind of maintain 5 stacks of Frenzy, because it is pretty bothersome to maintain 5 stacks of Frenzy at all times while you're doing your other set of attacks. You can also use Bash with, which one was it? Bash with Punish, which only requires you to maintain 3 stacks, and it's going to give you about as much damage. I think it even gives you more, because you got 5 times 2.5, which is going to give you, like, my math is off, 12.5. It's not going to give you more. It's going to give you slightly less, but it's going to give you 0.5 less damage, but it's a lot easier to maintain. And let's face it, 12% damage is better than no damage at all. So these are the 2 generators that I would advise you to get, since there is no cold generator. If there was a cold generator, I would advise you to use that, because you're going to be using a lot of cold skills. So then for your spender, you're going to go with Seismic Slam Permafrost, because it does ridiculous amounts of damage. Well, not ridiculous, but it does a reasonable amount of damage as a barbarian. Then you're going to be using Earthquake with also Chilling Earth. Even though this doesn't do as much damage as the fire version of Earthquake, it gives you a lot more control of the battlefield, and it still does 2,600 weapon damage, and it is a cold skill. Then you also do Avalanche with Cold, so that you can get, as much cold damage as possible. Warcry with Impunity. This is more to maintain your Fury generation than anything else, because you're going to be spending a lot of Fury with Seismic Slam, as you can see there. It's going to be spending tons. And then Wrath of Berserker with Insanity. This goes pretty much without saying. The passive skills that I went for were Bloodthirsts, so that you can get healed as you are bashing enemies' skulls in. I don't have that many. I don't have that much healing. I only have 13,000. Then we got Unforgiving to generate Fury instead of degenerating, because again, your main source of damage is going to be Seismic Slam, so you want to get all the help you can get. Earthen Might, which is going to get you, it's going to get you cheaper earthquakes, basically, as well as get you an additional 30 Fury every time you cast Avalanche. And then the Boon of Bulkathos, so that you can do Earthquake more often, and so that you can use Wrath of the Berserker more often as well. And that's pretty much how the build works. Now, I haven't played this build in quite some time, so don't expect me to, like, be all super amazing at the build, but I think you guys should be able to get an idea. So I'm running the Sorceress. On the Crusader, I was running the Scoundrel. I've already told you why, because I want to get hit. I don't want to do CC on the Crusader, but on the Barbarian, I do not want to get hit. I want to get as much CC as I possibly can, but I also feel I have decent enough survivability with the Barbarian, where I don't really need where I don't really need to go ahead and have the Templar running after me, just healing me and stuff. Oh, we have a treasure bandit here. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get it. Usually I pop Wrath of Vulcathos when I find these damn things. Ooh, 7 million. How you like them apples, my good sir? Oh, well, we didn't really get anything out of that. But yeah, this is pretty much the way that I'm currently running my Barbarian. I had to adapt to the Shard of Hate nerf. And again, I just want you guys to understand that it's like, I'm not against the nerf. As a matter of fact, I believe that Shard of Hate was ridiculously overpowered when coupled with Whirlwind. But I do believe that there are different ways to balance things out than making a specific skill, a specific combination of skills just become utterly useless. Particularly because, like I said, there were barbarians that were pretty much using this this sword as their sole means of doing Torment 6, which I now feel it's kind of it kind of sucks for them because I mean they're gonna have to redo their whole builds, rethink their whole strategies. At least that's kind of the way I feel about that. But again, this build has worked pretty good. I like this build. It's worked pretty good for me so far. I mean, I think I've been to tier 3 with the Torment 3 with this build, but it is definitely not as reliable on Torment 3 as my Crusader. My Crusader is faring a lot better on Torment 3 than my Barbarian. But it still gets the job done, particularly if you don't have to do commentary and you can actually focus on things. Because one of the things that you need to keep in mind is that the way this build works usually is you do your Avalanche. Avalanche is going to actually, when you do Avalanche with... The hell am I supposed to do here? Enter Kreider's Outpost. Oh, it's on the outside there. Let's just see. I think we have to go down a set of stairs here, right? No? What the hell? Oh, damn it. Completely blind. But as I was saying, as you play through this build, the cool thing is that the Avalanche with Frost, with Cold, is going to actually gather up enemies in the middle in a pattern almost. Let me just try and find a group of enemies where I can demonstrate how that works. I mean, these are just like 2 enemies. I wanted to get a bunch more of them. Okay, this... No, this is still too little. Come on, give me a pack of enemies, like a real pack of enemies. Well, we're supposed to kill all of these for the bounty. I'm not really doing the bounty. If you guys notice, I've got like no money right now. Okay, I think we should be able to gather all of these up. There. Now, if you guys notice, when we do Avalanche, it's going to gather them all up in the middle, and that it just gives you a real good opening for Seismic Slam to maximize the Seismic Slam potential. That's kind of one of the things that I'm doing. Then Earthquake is more one of those things where you're surrounded by enemies. Boom, pop Earthquake, everybody's frozen. You're going to be doing additional damage if you're running with any cold damage increase items, because most of your damage is going to be coming from cold. And you're going to even have additional chances of... just freezing your enemies. And on top of that, if you're running with the Enchantress, you're also going to be getting a ton of CC to go with it. Now, the issue with the Barbarian is he doesn't really have a Countess Julia's cameo amulet, so he is a lot more susceptible to arcane damage than, than my Crusader was. Let's go ahead and get more Fury. Oops, I just misclicked there. Actually, doing commentary on Diablo 3 is a little bit awkward, because doing live commentary, that is, because sometimes I just do misclicks for no reason. But regardless, I think guys get a good idea of what this Barbarian build is about. Try it out, specifically if maybe you were one of the persons that was affected by the Shard of Hate nerf. You might want to try this out. It works pretty well for me, so let me know how it works for you. Now, next up, I'm going to be showing you guys my current monk build. Now, both of the builds that you guys have seen so far, regardless of whether or not other players have made these specific builds before, I did not check anything online. I pretty much worked these builds up myself from the ground up. So, if anyone did them before me, more power to them, but I thought of these by myself. Now, the build that I have on my monk, that was not the case. This is a build that I have seen online. Once again, you can see that I'm very much into Reaper of Fashion, making my characters look as cool as possible. But yeah, maybe not everyone likes the whole Rakka's Guard set on the monk. Me personally, I do. But anyways, Regardless, the thing about the monk build is that I actually checked online to see what people were doing with monks, and the reason I did that is because while I was able to make builds for the monk around lightning, around holy, I just never really felt that the builds were being that effective. Like, they would work and they would carry you through Torment 1 easily, but I also thought these builds are just too slow. I wanted to do something a little bit faster with the monk. So I did a little bit of researching online, and a lot of people were talking about the whole Epiphany plus Tempest Rush. I mean, I'm pretty sure that most of you guys have already heard of this build, so this shouldn't really be anything new. And the thing about this particular build is that it is actually better if you use a two-handed weapon, but I don't have enough cooldown reduction to use this build right now. So I'm going with a setup that has two one-handed weapons, and because they both have cooldown reduction of 10%. And this build really revolves around cooldown reduction. Why? Because this whole build consists of you trying to get Epiphany up 100% of the time. Now, Epiphany lasts 15 seconds and it has a 60-second cooldown. So you want to minimize that to get to the point where Epiphany can have a 15-second cooldown. Now, I haven't really done the math on the exact cooldown reduction that you need to have in order to get there, but the current cooldown reduction that I do have is 58.89, and that is actually pretty damn decent. I've got cooldown reduction on the helm. I got the cooldown reduction set, and this set is actually slowing me down quite a bit because these goddamn pants refuse to get 2 sockets on them. Like, this is getting ridiculous. I've spent over like 5 million trying to get these pants to get 2 sockets, and they're just not doing it. As a matter of fact, I even went to the lengths of like, I'm gonna just go ahead and craft a new pair of them. Crafted a new pair, it was even worse than this one. Didn't have the sockets. Not only it didn't have the sockets, it had a lot worse stats. Now, the reason why you want to have 2 sockets in here should be obvious, because you can get 2 dexterity things in there. It's going to boost your damage quite significantly. Apart from that, I'm using Thunder Fury Blessed Blade of the Windseeker, and I really like the fact that there's Thunder Fury Blessed Blade of the Windseeker in Diablo 3. That's pretty cool. And then I'm using this axe, which gives me 20% more damage on fire skills. Then I also have 20% more damage on fire skills on this amulet. And I also have 14% more damage on fire skills on these bracers. So I got a ton of added damage onto fire skills, and let me show you guys how the build works. So you are not really going to need a generator, because you're not going to want to stand still, ever. You don't ever want to stand still with this build. You're going to be channeling Tempest Rush pretty much 99% of the time. And I say 99% of the time because this build is still not perfect, because I need more cooldown reduction. Because if you are able to get Epiphany 100% of the time, you're also going to be able to get Tempest Rush 100% of the time. Currently, to make up for the fact that I am not able to maintain Tempest Rush 100% of the time, I'm using Mystic Ally Air, because you can not really sacrifice it, but you can use it and gain 100 spirit. So whenever you're running low on spirit, boom, pop this, you're going to get your spirit. I'm using Mantra of Conviction with increased movement speed. So basically, whenever you kill anything, you're going to get 30% increasement in movement speed, and you're going to be wanting to move fast. Like I said, this build is all about moving fast. Then we're using Sweeping Wind with Firestorm, because I'm boosting my fire damage as much as possible. We're using Epiphany with Inner Fire, because this is kind of like the key to the whole Tempest Rush plus Epiphany thing, because as you rush through, you're going to see clones of yourself just constantly attacking everything around you for 353 weapon damage as fire. Then on your main attack skill is Seven-Sided Strike with Fulminating Onslaught. The reason this is even here is just every now and then you're going to need damage in between the Epiphany cooldowns. You can pop this up. It's going to give you a decent amount of damage. And that is pretty much the whole thing about this build. Now, I'm using Transcendence, which is probably not the best use of my passive slot. I might be changing this because it is really very, very little. 248 life is not really all that much. I might have to reconsider which thing I'm using here. I'm also running 20,000 healing, so again, I'm not entirely sure how necessary that is. I still need to experiment with it. Thing is, this character is about, 5 to 6 hours old, so there's that. Beacon and Vitar, pretty much a must-have because, like I said, this whole thing is about keeping Epiphany up 100% of the time. So cooldown reduction is pretty much essential. Exalted Soul, also pretty much essential because you're going to need as much of a spirit buffer as you can get. Unless you're already running Epiphany 100% of the time. At that point, I'm not entirely sure if Exalted Soul is going to be necessary or not. And then fleet-footed, so that you can move as fast as you possibly can. If you don't want to have fleet-footed, you can also use momentum, because since you're going to be constantly moving, you're going to be constantly having 15% more damage. Which, as a matter of fact, I might eventually switch those two up. But for now, I'm using fleet-footed. So let's go outside and show you guys how this works. So what you do is you come to the outside. I'm using the Templar for survivability because, like I said, this character is still very young. He's running almost 300,000 damage, and he's got 5 million toughness, but still he drops faster than a sack of potatoes under certain circumstances, particularly if you get Jailered, Wallered, and then Arcaned or something. Yeah, that is going to be a problem for this build. So the Templar is very, very useful in keeping me alive. Now, the way that this works is basically you just start Tempest Rushing, and notice that how fast your spirit is actually descending. Oh, we actually have to go inside there. Okay, good. This build actually works reasonably well in tight spaces as well. But notice how fast your spirit is descending. Whenever you see your spirit go below half, you want to pop your Mystic Ally, get your spirit back. But essentially, as soon as you encounter enemies, you pop Epiphany, and look at what happens. Like I said, I did not come up with this build. I found this build on the internet, on multiple YouTube channels, as well as forums, as well as Reddits, and whatever. And I just thought, wow, that looks like a lot of fun. And on top of that, you can also add the thing that I told you, the fire AoE attack, which is pretty damn good if you're running something with additional fire damage. And you'll notice I'm not doing that much damage now, but then you pop Epiphany, boom, 3 million, 403 million, boom, 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 just like clones coming out all over the place. Again, the damage of this build is still not necessarily there for me because I still need at least those 2 sockets on the pants. But it's just right now I'm totally broke because I've spent all the money that I have, like probably over 10 million or some shit, crafting those pants and trying to redo the stats on them, as well as redoing stats on certain weapons, so that I could go ahead and buff this build even more. And again, bear in mind, this build is going to be more effective. At least it seems at this point that this build is a lot more effective if you use a 2-handed weapon, and I'm also using 2 one-handed weapons so that I can get a little bit more cooldown reduction. It still works. Currently, I can only really reliably do Torment 1, and even that runs fairly slowly, so this build still needs a lot of work. But it is currently the build that I'm devoting a lot of my time to because it is a lot of fun. It is something that I hadn't done before, and every now and then you can also pop your mantra, which is going to increase your damage by an additional 10%. Now, the other good thing about this build is if you have friends that do fast builds that do ridiculous amounts of damage, you're going to be able to keep up with them, and you're going to be buffing your entire party with the whole 10% increase in damage. So it is a fast build. It is a very good build to just run after people, and it is probably a really, really good build for boosting. Like, I can tell, imagine running someone through tier 6 at lower levels using this build. Like, you're going to kill everything regardless if you can see it or not. You don't even have to target stuff. It just gets auto-targeted for you. And it is a beast of a build. And whenever you're running and you don't have Epiphany, always remember, you still have the 7-sided strike, which still dishes out a tremendous amount of damage and should keep you fairly balanced in terms of damage whenever you do not have Epiphany. You can also run, I'm currently running 7-sided strike with the rune that gives it its fulminating strike or whatever. It's the rune that gives it bursts of holy damage at each hit. But if you still don't have enough cooldown reduction to actually keep Epiphany up for as long as I personally can, what you're going to be doing is you can also switch the rune on 7-sided strike to Sustained Assault, which is going to give it a 17 seconds cooldown, and it is going to enable you to do 7-sided strike a lot more often to make up for the fact that you don't have Epiphany up for as much as you would like. And then again, it's just a matter of balancing out your spirit when you don't have Epiphany. And you just got to keep that Mystic ally going. There was also another item that I was using previously to this, which was a helmet that I ended up breaking because it wasn't that useful. But it was one of those monk gems, and what it did was, if you guys happen to come across this item, it is also very useful for this build. This is the point that I'm getting at. What it did was, whenever you used the blinding flash, it would give you 81 spirits. So that would be an alternative to the Mystic ally. The thing is, the helmet that I currently am wearing has a lot better stats, which is why I ended up using that instead. But as you can see, this is also a really fun build, and it is currently the build that I am working on. But anyways, that is going to be it for this video. As per usual, leave me your comments, feedback, all that kinds of good stuff. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.